All right. Welcome back, everybody. We are live again on another episode of Law Subscribed Live. I have with me here today somebody who is, we met through the internet, but turns out we're neighbors and we've met in person. John Norkus, welcome to the show.
Matthew, thank you very much. It's great to be here. Looking forward to talking about pricing, especially where AI is trying to make it all fuzzy.
Yeah. And so John, we got connected just to give my audience a quick background, and then I want to hear from you about your background. Is John has chiefpricingofficer.com, which I found out about through Mark Stiving, friend of the show. And John, you've I think been on Impact Pricing as well, and so
I
I
have.
probably learned about it when you were a guest on that show. So naturally, being so in love with pricing as I am, I was like, chiefpricingofficer.com. How do I sign up? Where do I go? Oh, it's in the name. And so I started to attend events and read your posts. And eventually you were doing outreach to members in the community, which is how we actually got a chance to talk. We had such a good conversation that we met up at a local Starbucks because we're just a few towns away from each other. We had another great conversation. So for my longtime listeners, this is actually the third talk I'm having with John. So it's going to be I think it's going to be very deep because we're going to be able to go deep because we've already had a couple of conversations. So with that background, John, go ahead, tell people more about yourself.
Well, pricing and profitability management is my specialty. I have been helping organizations improve their pricing now for roughly 35 years. So, rewinding all the way back into my time in the Big Four, I've been a senior partner at Deloitte running part of their pricing practice there. I've also been running the price program for KPMG US, but now I'm doing chiefpricingofficer.com. Well, what is that? What I've found is that those who are not just pricers, but price leaders, thinking about where pricing is going, strategy and infrastructure and tactics, approaches, looking out for what's coming next, and operating at a C-suite level, really has not had this connective tissue to elevate and to celebrate those who consider themselves to be professional pricers and price leaders in the marketplace. And so I've created this community, chiefpricingofficer.com, in order for us to have a place, sort of a clubhouse, to have those conversations, to post ideas, to connect. But if somebody says, well, John, what is it that you do about it? I'm also part of a partnership known as Profit Drivers, which is a for-profit organization that actually helps to make those kinds of changes. But really, my concentration is trying to connect those who have these questions around pricing and where it goes, not from a spreadsheet, how do I do a calculation, but where are we going with all of this, and how do we provide the connective tissue among marketing and sales and product and operations such that we can actually lead the rest of our companies, corporations, organizations into the future, especially given all of the upheaval and the disruption.
Yeah. And we're going to dive into all that. But one of the things that we really connected on in the beginning too is the lack of incentives around the billable hour of what that drives in an organization and the incentives that it creates versus other kinds of pricing structures. So when I tell you to tell me what you think about the billable hour, well, John, tell me, what do you think about the billable hour?
If I'm being measured by billable hours, then every dollar is a good dollar. And it doesn't necessarily matter whether or not it's a profitable dollar, it's a good dollar. And so if it's about getting people busy, if it's about utilization, I want to get as many people utilized as possible, even if it's $1 an hour. So what it has done for us is it's skewed how we're actually looking at being able to serve our clients. And that is over the entire professional services set of industries, whether it be legal, whether it be accounting, whether it be advisory. If you're being measured based on the number of hours and the utilization, then you're going to be optimizing for that and not necessarily optimizing for profit contribution, the actual dollar amounts. And maybe I'm just burying the headline on this one. It suboptimizes being able to serve a client.
Yeah, yeah. And it's so interesting to hear you talk about what you optimize for in that paradigm, because I know an attorney that literally uprooted his family so that they could live closer to a train to get downtown.
So that every hour, so that they could optimize the number of hours that were being spent providing value to a client. And I sort of tripped over a word in that last sentence, providing value to a client. What has happened and what has really come to the surface in the last couple of years is there's this decoupling between number of hours charged and value. And so
Mhm.
when we think about clients and serving them, clients would prefer not to pay us by the hour. Clients would prefer to pay us based on value. Well, the invention of the billable hour was what, 1916 in Boston, where it was invented, and it seems pretty simple. And at that time, there was a linkage between input, number of hours, and value, what you got out of it. Well, that's all changed. And what has happened is now we have to decouple those so that we're having a conversation about value provided to your client and what they're being charged for. And so, boy, I could go down a number of paths at this point. So, Matthew, keep me honest on this one. Where should we go
Yeah.
next?
Yeah, so I think that, like, how is it then do you define, or do your customers or clients define value, right? Because whether you're selling widgets or you're selling services, yes, over 100 years ago, value was input.
Hmm.
Today, in an AI powered world, value might be a little bit different. So, like, seeing what you're seeing, because you're not just, I mean, you have decades of experience helping with pricing, but now also with the community that you've built, you're seeing what different pricers are doing in different industries as well. So, like, what are you seeing sort of even at a high level? And then feel free to call out deep examples of what you're seeing in the way that AI is impacting the way that we define value as service providers.
Right. Some see AI as this great apocalypse. I see it as an opportunity to really bring to the surface this notion of value. And I, again, it could be this amorphous thing, but let's break it down. Let's make it simple. Simplify. Clients are buying one of four things. One, capacity. They are buying hours. I want this particular person to work on this and I will pay them based on their input, right? That's the old model. That's where 70 to 90% of all firms are still connecting to. And quite frankly, AI is not going to necessarily bring that down to zero. It's not. But it is capacity based, and it's the old way of doing things. The next way is output based. I'm going to pay you for a thing. Well, hold aside for the moment that you're putting all this input. I'm just going to pay you for the thing you're delivering me. Are you delivering me a brief? Are you delivering me an event, a courtroom event, or if you're delivering me an information system? In professional services, it's a thing, something that can be defined by scope. And then the next one has to do with capability. And capability, am I performing a particular function for you over a period of time or a measured period of time? Or better said, do I get to call you whenever I want you to perform something during a period of time? Well, probably getting it. How do you price one of those things? You price that based on subscription. I want you to be available to me when I need it. I might need you a lot. I might need you a little. And so that has to do with your capability. Is the capability there for me to plug in like a utility when I need it, as much as I need it? Okay. And then there's outcome based. And so outcome is I'm going to pay you when this thing actually happens. In some professional services companies, it's when you get this kind of profit. In others, it's when you get this kind of outcome, say in some legal proceeding, and you get the outcome you need. It's largely contingency based.
Or closing a deal like an M&A transaction, right? Upon
Exactly right.
close, boom, you get your agreed upon outcome based fee once we close.
Right. And so the acronym, just to summarize, the acronym is COCO, which is capacity, output, capability, outcome. COCO. Think about it that way and then choose when you're thinking of this client, where do they see value? If they see value in the outcome, closing an M&A deal. getting a particular legal outcome, adding value to the organization. Well, that's outcome based, and outcome based should be priced in a way that aligns with the value so that all parties, back to the notion of incentives, all parties are incented to that particular outcome. It's interesting. Many people have come back to me and said, John, this is not new. These subjects are not new. The notion of outcome-based or contingency-based or value-based, it goes under a number of different names. They've been doing that for decades now. What makes it different? And what makes it different is the fact that it's very difficult to attach your prices with your inputs. And so, the notion of burning the ships, you kind of don't have an alternative anymore. And if you continue to attach yourself to inputs, you're going to find those inputs are actually reducing. Why? Well, there's this phrase that is all things that are knowable immediately now. So what are clients paying for? They're either paying for someone that is reliable, I can count on you, I'm counting on a relationship, or they're paying for an outcome, which is I want this to happen and I'll pay you as a percentage of how much that happens or when it happens. And so it's a very different dynamic that we're having to shift toward. There is a good piece or an important piece in there around the humanity. We are social animals and we do require relationships, and trust actually matters. And so is AI going to take over everything? No, because ultimately people like and trust those that serve them and want to return to those that they like and trust rather than trying to lean on AI. I do not see an outcome, at least within my lifetime, in which all business will be held by some machine and we get to sit back and collect paychecks. I don't see that.
Yeah, and I really love this COCO framework, right? And like where I live personally, like as a legal practitioner, is in the middle OC, right? Outputs and it was capability, right? So like somebody pays for me to draft them a master services agreement. That's output. It's not necessarily about when they sign the deal. It's about drafting and negotiating the deal. And they want my capability to do that as well. So it's kind of like where output meets capability is where I like to live in the subscription legal services space. I think that's where it works really well. Like even other flat fee work, getting a trademark, getting estate planning, right? Like that's output in a large way because it doesn't, like, you can't guarantee somebody gets a trademark or guarantee, somebody that, that the estate plan necessarily does 100% of the things that you want, because it's going to be a long time from now that we actually figured that out. So you can't really, in certain things, you can't always pay for outcomes, right? But you can for, okay, this is, and I feel like if you could live in outcomes, that's a great place to be, because if you in the legal space, what the value of this deal is to your client, right? This is a $10 million deal. Right. But they're paying $10 million. The buyer, buyer's paying 10 mil. But then what's the actual value of what they're getting after that? Well, it's probably more than 10 million. Right. So you could back in, you could actually use real numbers to get to okay, like what's then the value of my legal services when we get this outcome and this deal closes for my client. Right. So when you have real numbers to work with, outcome-based pricing is something you could do, right? Like back in the legal space as I think about it. So what do you have to say about all that?
I think it's exciting what's coming. The more people are talking about outcome-based, the more they're moving toward the last O in that COCO stack. And it allows us to then land on what the client actually finds as important or values. Lots of ways of describing it.
No client wanted to pay for the capacity of my ability to draft a legal contract from scratch.
Yes.
Right. They wanted they want the outcome, or they just want the agreement to then go later get the outcome. Right.
I'll take
and now the AI.
Oh,
yeah, go ahead.
I'll take it one step further. And clients, it has become a bit perverse in that in the old model, clients themselves wanted to monitor and manage the input. Well, I think this is going to take 1,000 hours. Yes. Well, I don't think it's going to take 1,000 hours. How do you know? But procurement organizations are willing to go through the process of saying, well, I think that this is 300. I want to negotiate that down to 250. How do you, well, then we're negotiating over the quality, the input that goes into it has really gotten weird in when we think about how some of these deals are being put together for large transformations. And now we have the opportunity to shift towards something that is more output, or maybe it's something that's more capability, or maybe it's something that's really outcome based. And when we're talking about outcome based, I do have to bring up a caveat, because outcome based means I don't get paid until after my client gets paid.
Right.
Ooh, wait a minute. That brings up a little bit of a twist, doesn't it? Yes, it does. And what is that twist? The twist is, how am I keeping the kids in school? How am I paying the mortgage? How am I having meals, right? How am I actually getting myself through with some of my day-to-day costs while waiting for the big payoff that may come months, maybe even a year after the transaction is done, or the value is delivered but not yet showing up on the books. How does that work? Well, there's plenty of ways to structure these things such that both parties are invested in the outcome, and making sure that both parties are invested. One way is providing that ongoing retainer or subscription to make sure that costs are covered, and then we both profit handsomely when the outcome occurs. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a fair way to operate.
Yeah. And that's like a hybrid billing structure that is not
Mm-hmm.
hourly based, it's subscription and outcome based. That's what it comes down to, because certainly like that, and that's what I see. Like we could put things into like nice clean categories of cocoa, but realistically, on a lot of deals, whatever nature of services business you're in, it's going to be a little bit of some, a little bit of another,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like even though even in the 70 to 90% of firms still billing by the hour, you'll still have some pricing pressure from your clients saying, well, can we flat fee this work? Right? And then what happens when it goes out of scope? Well, it goes back to hourly, right? Well, what I like to do, and one of the reasons why I had to build Practi, is when the scope changes, you could also just change your monthly price, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
the scope changes, you go up a tier, or scope decreases, you go down a month what you're paying, every single month or year or quarter or what have you. But what I want to bring us back to, and where I think really like your expertise and those on chiefpricingofficer.com lie, is when you look at this, and I'm trying to keep it in your framing, capability, or not capability, capacity, right? The hourly billing capacity, um, like what you did, drafting contracts from scratch, coding from scratch, right? Now, like the AI does a really good job at building the first draft of code, building the first draft of a contract or legal documents or other agreements. And the legal judgment comes in next to review and make sure it's correct and then suggest changes. We all have an assistant now where we say, fix this, fix this, fix this. We don't even need to go in and type the changes. That stuff that used to take a lot of time doesn't take a lot of time anymore. So that's being replaced. So like, what was the value the client actually was paying for? And this comes back to packaging and pricing, right? So like, how do we repackage maybe what the client actually valued? Because it wasn't how long it took you to draft the contract. They just want the agreement, right? To write the code for the application. They just want the application.
Mm-hmm.
So now that time shrinks because of modern technology, how do you repackage and then properly price? So we're talking about, yes, subscription, yes, outcome-based pricing, but even like the nitty gritty, and I know context matters here, but like, how do I know if I'm charging too little? How do I know if I'm charging too much? What kind of flexibility do we need? Do we need change orders? And then like, how do you package those old things where you just like it's bundled in, right? There's all these questions, and I have obviously handled this with lawyers. So you could speak to professional services specifically, or even more broadly. I think we could learn from other industries as well, John.
For sure. And when we're talking about setting price or deal shaping, as it may be called, we're talking about managing the expectation of the client who has already something in their mind about where something is going to be priced. They've created a budget. There's been a variety of studies that have been done that says somewhere between 60 and 75% of all projects already have a budget in mind before they reach out to those providers who are going to help them. They already have something in their head. And so we're dealing with something here that is somewhat org behavior, somewhat psychological, and it has to do with anchors, price anchors. And if you're doing an analysis, and if you're doing a diagnostic for a mid-sized company, whether it be supply chain or commercial excellence or HR or otherwise, there's a typical price point for doing that kind of diagnostic work, of which at the end of it comes out the diagnosis and the recommendation. This is a professional services example. And somebody may come back, a client may come back and say, haha, I know you're using AI. I want that number to go down. Well, you have a number of options. You can negotiate over your diagnostic as though it's one transaction, or you could immediately move into the value-based conversation that says, I believe this diagnostic is going to produce 10, 20, $50 million worth of EBITDA for you. Why don't we have that as the index and do the complete diagnostic plus implementation of new ways of working? It helps us shift to that. Clients who, and there's an example, actually, boy, it was a number of months ago, but KPMG Global, this was actually in the Financial Times. Right, so this is public information. KPMG Global told their auditor, Grant Thornton, I know you're using AI, and so I demand that you reduce my audit price. Their auditor. And their auditor, because it has to be part of public information, said, okay, we'll bring that down. I believe the number is 17%. Their annual audit came down 17% because AI was being used. Usually through negotiation, you are splitting the difference. Does that mean that 34, 35% was saved from a cost perspective by using AI in doing the audit? Interesting finding. It was made public. And it shows that if you're measuring this by effort alone, yes, it comes down. However, when we think about the value of an audit, what is the value of an audit? The value of an audit has to do with public perception, whether or not this is a trustworthy organization, whether or not the numbers they report are the numbers that are actual or close to actual, given the audit that has been performed. And so we're questioning here the overall value of doing something versus the cost of doing something. These are examples that are, when we think about using AI and the client asking us for an output, but now want to argue over the input, is an opportunity for us to identify the value of what that output is going to be, or hopefully the outcome. So conversations need to switch. Conversations need to be more about impact to the company rather than input to the project. Did that answer the question?
I think that answered the question. And also, I think that for the first time, in order to like actually have those conversations, like that's going to require real effort, right? Like part of the reason like capacity billing and pricing works, or people like it, is because you could be lazy. Oh, how long did that take? How many hours did you spend? Right? Like it is easy to measure, right? How long did it take? But that's not necessarily where the value is, like you said. So we have to have actual conversations with our customers, with our clients about where is the value, because I think it's a strong argument, and I hear it more and more, that it's not that AI saved us time that should reduce our cost, because sometimes saving time and getting results faster is more valuable, but you have to not be billing by the hour to be able to capture that value for yourself as a service provider.
I'll take you one step further on that one. I have served clients in which you usually are stepping in. Again, let's go back to the diagnostic, right? Let's diagnostic example. Oh, well, that's 6 to 8 weeks. Is it? What is really now the guide for how long something takes? It used to be how much effort was required for the advisor to do all of the analysis work. Well, you could argue, well, it's no longer going to be 6 to 8 weeks, it's going to be 4 to 6. Now, what is actually throttling the speed? And I'll tell you, it has little to do with actually the speed of the project and doing the work. It has everything to do with the outcome of that diagnostic. My diagnostics have taken just as long. Why? Because I have to schedule time with the client. I have to be talking to their senior leadership group. I need to be talking to their sales organization. I need to be getting inside their IT organization. I need to be, right? All of the process that is around the diagnostic still has to occur. Therefore, the limiter is not the amount of analysis time anymore. The limiter is whether or not the organization wants to move quickly on what the output is going to be. And so if you guys need to change the way that you're doing business, all of that has to be socialized with a variety of pieces inside the organization. That is now the limitation of change. So the limitation of change is how quickly the people can absorb it, not necessarily how long it takes to actually do a bunch of calculations, because that has been reduced to near zero.
Yeah. So I'm curious to know, and you feel free to talk personally too. But like one of the things that I like you sitting in the seat that you sit in with chiefpricingofficer.com is, and you're reading a lot of news on this, or you're having AI or people help you find the news around pricing. That like sometimes it's not always daily, but sometimes I'll get a daily update that's like, here's the 5 articles today that talked about pricing in the news. So you're sort of seeing a lot of this. So maybe you're seeing this question too, but what my audience is really interested in too is the technology around this, right? It doesn't have to be legal specific, right? So like, what technology, yes, we could always hire people, right, too, but like, what technology do you see chief pricing officers or their equivalents using and leveraging to help with the running the financials or figuring out the pricing and figuring out the packaging? Obviously, I'll be a little selfish here. Practi is trying to be one of those solutions for the legal industry, right? Helping them price and package. But even if that's not a good fit for every law firm, and I get that it won't be, what technology is out there that they can maybe start playing around with or testing out?
When we're talking about AI, there are a variety of tools that can be taken advantage of. We really haven't seen an advanced AI tool that is going to take the pricing function away. We've what is important, and I'll use the example of Practi, is being able to provide the flexibility associated with what is being paid for. It's interesting. I'm actually going to be on a podcast tomorrow with another software provider, an ERP provider, who claims that being able to provide the foundation for costing things differently, to decouple the notion of how much something costs versus how much I'm charging for something, that's the real trick right now. Is when Practi talks about being able to put together an ongoing subscription for services and then being able to dial up or dial down that subscription based on the scope of the work that is being performed, a number of attributes that will able to dial it up and dial down, that's the right idea going forward. And in fact, well, let's fall back for a moment. Back in the early aughts, 2000s, there was a study done that said, what is the greatest linkage in being able to get add-on work, ongoing work, relationship with a client? Does it have to do with the quality of the work that is being currently produced? Does it have to do with the price of the work? Does it have to do with a variety of other things? You know what the number one thing was? The number one likelihood, it had everything to do with responsiveness.
Mm-hmm. And
Responsiveness.
you know what the number one complaint is that ethics bodies get about lawyers is lawyers who are not communicating with their clients enough. So responsiveness.
It's all about responsiveness. And it's not about, I could give you the answer immediately. It's, I got your request. I understand. Here's when I'm going to be able to answer it for you. And so being able to manage the communications and expectations is what really makes a difference. And so I'm going to now jump back to something that was said previously is if I am on a subscription with a client, that means that they get the kind of responsiveness necessary, and then they can judge me as a function of me getting back to them. Because doing analysis takes this long now, not, well, we're still having the word is still being figured out and I haven't,
Right.
right? That happens in a near immediate basis. What is important is how I or you or anybody else is framing the answer that comes back on whether or not it's useful and practical.
Yeah. 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 And what's amazing is some of these AI tools. So it's not necessarily about the AI tools that help you with the pricing. It's about what that help you with the service delivery too and make it better. So I'll have a client schedule a call with me. And I don't even know why. Like I give them the option when they schedule to tell me why, but sometimes they just want to get on my calendar, right? So they'll get
Right?
on the calendar and then they'll tell me what their problem is or what they're trying to avoid, or they just got this contract or, whatever. We need to change something here. And then I bring up my AI tools and we solve it for them in about 10-15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't even need to yeah, there is value to being able to message, triage, and give an estimate. But like now the way I've set up my business is they schedule calls with me. I don't pick up the phone randomly. Like they have to schedule a call. So they have me captive for 15 to 30 minutes. Okay, well, let's just solve it in these 15 to 30 minutes. And we can, or we could get really stinking close to solving it in that time with these tools. Right. So like it's like the paradigm is not just like shifting, it's radically changing. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and like it's changing at different paces and different levels. Like I'm way down market, right? I'm helping small business owners, right? Like enterprise changes a little more slowly. But yeah, it's just radically shifting from what it used to, the way we used to do things.
Take you one step further, and you saying, well, I'm way down market. Actually, what you just described is what the big corporations actually want. Take a look, take a look at this notion of the leverage model, right? Why are most large professional services organizations gripping? Because it used to be what was known as the leverage ratio. That's how they judge themselves. Leverage ratio, one partner per how many staff? And if you're doing a strategy project, it was 1-3 or 1-5, right? One partner and you get 3-5 staff. That was the leverage ratio of which we can charge all the hours. And then you went further down, and if it was more operational work, it was 1-8, 1-10. And when you got to some of these very large programming, transformational ERP type things, the leverage ratios got 1-20, 1-50, and in some cases 1-100. Okay, well, that pyramid is basically going away. We've seen it. And what clients actually want is to work with the lead partner. They want to work with you. They want to work with me. They don't want to be deferred to, well, that's junior staffer number 52 who's trying to work out all of the analysis, and when they're done, they'll send you the results, and we'll circle back, we'll circle the wagons, we'll talk about how you feel about that. No, what you just described is what clients are looking for. I want to work with the person who has X amount of decades worth of experience through this, because they know that analytics are one thing, experience is quite another. And being able to free up the time of that most senior person is what's going to make the difference. And yes, it is about service delivery, but at the same time, it also has to do with how you're actually structuring that engagement. And what you just described is those who are subscribed to you get you. And if you can solve it real time, why not? It seems to make all that much more sense. And let me give you one more, which is really attractive, which is for those organizations that have suppliers, they want predictability around cost. predictability around cost it would be better to say, I am charging X thousand dollars per month versus, I don't know. There are some months that it's going to be 1 gazillion, and there are other months it might be zero. I can't manage through that. I cannot make that predictable. It needs to be something where I need someone to solve my problems when I need them solved in an on-demand manner. There you go. And that lends itself toward the notion of capability. I need your capability to solve my problems when I need them solved.
Yeah. 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 I think this gets back to like the who's bearing the risk part of the conversation of how you package and price your services as a service provider,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Billable hour, all the risk is on the client, right? We'll see how long it takes, right? Flat fee, fixed rate, all the risk is on the service provider. Oh, I hope this doesn't take too long, right? Outcome based, well, maybe we do all this work and we don't get paid if the outcome never happens, right? But with subscription, right? Yes, some months will be more, some months will be less. We still have a well-defined scope, but the time it takes, well, that's going to shift and it's going to change. As long as value is being provided for a price that the client's happy to pay. I think that's the solution. I mean, obviously, I believe that, but like, I think that's where this conversation has ultimately led to. I'm invested in it now. I believed that before I had a company that helped law firms do this, John. So, I mean, what do you have to say about that? And feel free to disagree with me.
There are nuances for each one of those models. What clients have done when it used to be based on inputs, or the capacity model was, well, I'll pay you for every hour up to a cap. Right. So it was time and materials with a cap. Well, that then shifted back this risk model back toward the provider, and in many cases becomes generally unfair. The the output based model has always been a tough one because the client themselves, in many cases unknowingly, just agreed to getting a lower quality product. What do you mean by that? Well, because this is the scope and this is the price. And now the provider is going to say, and I will do everything I possibly can to reduce the price associated with, and hope that we don't have a quality problem along the way, because that's how they make their money, right? Again, how are they motivated? Right. They're motivated based on being able to optimize profit. And so it brings on a very different motivation. What was it? It was a John Glenn who said, I know I'm hurtling through space on something that was ultimately awarded to the lowest bidder. And so his life relies on those who are actually doing this for at least as cost as possible. And so, I'm sorry, for those who don't know, John Glenn was an astronaut, one of the first pioneers. Anyway, what you're describing in subscription-based, yes, both parties have agreed, and so both parties are invested. This is how much I'm paying per month, and this is what I expect from you. It is predictable. Risk is on both parties because, as you just said, what is the definition of good? It's whether or not I trust you to actually move on to the next month. Are you providing me that quality? And so you've got an opportunity to regularly go back to the notion of responsiveness and say, and how am I doing? And how am I doing now? And how am I doing now? The predictability, I would not underestimate the value of predictability, especially when it comes to revenues and providers. That is a big deal. And the notion of outcome based is the ultimate, but outcome based also requires both parties to come to an agreement on the measurement of good. And so now you're introducing a baseline and measurement program. How do I know that if it's the deal going through, that's more output based, but it's what was the value of the deal? How are we measuring the deal? Or if I've made an impact to your company, are we measuring it based on some income statement, or are we measuring it based on the adoption of the new behaviors that produce the greater value, whether or not that value shows up? Many different pieces to that puzzle around outcome based that in many forms are difficult to manage.
All right, we're getting close to time here. So,
oh my goodness, it's flown by.
Wrapping up the conversation. Let's say folks really like having this conversation, right? Maybe they're the pricing officer at their law firm, which could mean they're the owner, John. But I'm getting more and more followers on LinkedIn and connected with pricing people at law firms, like mid-sized and larger firms. So there are now these roles of how do we price at big law firms. So like I know for a fact 3 of them are following me on LinkedIn now, so they might be watching this episode. John, what does joining chief pricing officer mean for somebody? Like, what are they doing, to join this community? What could they expect to get out of that?
Oh, well, it's nothing more than signing up. And then what is available to them on a daily basis is pricing in the news. So at least 5 stories that we've analyzed that have come out of the Wall Street Journal that is specific to how things are being priced in the marketplace. Anything from being able to stay ahead of tariffs through some of the psychology associated with consumer business to industrial products or even legal. And that is provided on a daily basis. With every week on Friday, I produce a pricing in the news for the week, which is a roundup of everything that has happened that shows up in your mailbox. Along with that is Chief Pricing Officer is the ability to reach out to anybody within the community, and either from mentorship all the way through just reaching out to them and saying, hi, I saw your background and I'm interested in what it is you do, so that we are raising that community.
Yeah.
Or reaching out directly to me if you're looking for a recommendation on either what to do or who to contact within this community. And so of the hundreds of folks that are out there, I could probably connect you to someone that might be able to be a good connection. So I could be that connector for you. And that's what Chief Pricing Officer is all about. It also this is going to be one of the podcasts that will be posted out there. Ultimately, we're all about elevating and celebrating the notion of price leadership in the marketplace.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. And then to the extent that, you're involved, you're part of that, you're a partner in another organization. I mean, it's okay, John. Like, do you have services to potentially provide to law firms, or do you know people who do that like need help with pricing? Because while practically we give them a technology solution, we're not a consulting firm, we're a technology company. So like, who are whether it's you and your organization or members of, chiefpricingofficer.com, like, are there people out there, that like, oh yeah, like they could help, or we could help law firms as they transition from hourly billing to price and package alternative fees?
Absolutely. So anything from price optimization, price strategy, price architecture, negotiation, infrastructure, either I or my organization can do it, or I could recommend somebody who can. It's the full package around the subject of pricing.
Yeah, love it. All right, so with that, the name of the organization is the website, chiefpricingofficer.com. But are there any other websites or platforms or social media that you want anybody to find or follow or subscribe to a newsletter anywhere else?
No, or reach out to me directly. I'm John at chiefpricingofficer.com, or reach out to info at chiefpricingofficer.com if you're just looking for more information.
All right, great. Well, stick around because we're going to have to let LinkedIn catch up with the conversation, but we'll sign off now. One last time, John Norkus, thanks so much for coming on Law Subscribed Live.
Matt Kerbis, thank you so much. This has been fun.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us live. I saw a number of you came in, came out, came back throughout the episode live today. If you're not already and you're interested in this topic, follow John on LinkedIn, click the bell, click all to make sure you're seeing all of the posts about this kind of topic. And if you're in John's audience and you are a lawyer, or you're interested in how like legal tech and things are changing the legal industry or the pricing of legal services, follow me on LinkedIn, click the bell and click all. And with that, John, stick around as we go off live. Thanks everybody for joining us today.